Hello, Carl here with Sustainability Theory News. We're over at hobbyfarms.com. They have an article on the Sheep Care Guide that's been updated for 2017. The American Sheep Industry Association will link to their page as well. They published this guide as a way to help people raise sheep better. Now, there are two types of sheep: wool sheep and hair sheep. The hair sheep are typically raised for meat, and you don't have to shear their wool. The wool sheep for wool and meat. And of course, both of the pregnant females will produce milk. Now, family flocks, they're growing. A lot of hobby farmers are using sheep because they're easier to raise than goats, and they can cause a little less damage to the pasture when they're eating. And they're not very picky eaters, but as they talk about later, they have to become acclimated to their feed. That way, the microorganisms in their guts can process the feed or digest the feed, whatever you feed them, whether it's pure pasture grasses, invasive weeds, hay, or some sort of commercial feed. Now, sheep do get stressed out, but they are adaptable. And they move in surprising ways. So they like to move uphill, and inclines should be gradual. They don't like reflections or bright spots, so shiny metal fencing might not be good. And they instinctively move into the wind. So kind of determine where your prevailing winds are coming from, and then use that when planning your moving patterns. Now, transport sheep in humane ways. Apparently, if they have a lot of food in their guts, it's not good for transportation. It can stress them out. So they recommend withholding feed for 15 to 18 hours prior to transporting on a short trip of less than 8 hours. For trips of 48 hours or more, you're going to want to plan a spot to stop and rest the sheep. Now, learn and know your area's regulations. Not all areas appreciate sheep. Usually, if you're on a small scale farm, it's not that big a deal. But again, check your local regulations. Create and maintain an emergency plan. So find out what's going to happen if a sheep is injured. What happens if a sheep gets lost? If there is a natural disaster, what are you going to do to take care of your animals and, of course, your pets as well? A lot of emergency shelters will not take pets, much less livestock. Maintain safe feed and water. So make sure it doesn't get contaminated from chemicals. Make sure the feed doesn't get too moist and then starts growing mold. Make sure the water is readily available as well. Now let's go to the American Sheep Industry Association. I will link to this page in the description. It talks about how it's a $5 billion industry in America. $5.8 billion. It's a pretty big industry. And here is their guide. I just briefly went through it. I will link to all 3 pages in the description. And if you'd like to see more news headlines like this, subscribe to my channel. Have a great day.